Bodies vanish in snow before they even see death. December 16, 1944, near Monschau in the Ardennes. -10 cold fog, snow crusted over frozen mud. 200,000 Germans advance, 1,000 tanks follow. 1,600 shells a minute scream along 85 miles of front. Somewhere, a single unauthorized order quietly rewrites every rule of survival. German engineering doctrine and discipline were built for predictable trajectories, ground bursts, and cover. Against thinking fuses and invisible geometry, their hard-earned rule is simply disintegrate. If German science once led this technology, how did their soldiers end up dying beneath their own abandoned idea? December 16, 1944. Early morning near Monschau in the Ardennes. The frozen ground shivers under the weight of distant explosions. Breath hangs in the air like smoke. Snow lies crusted and hard over churned earth and shattered trees. Another American artillery salvo tears overhead. German infantry of the 326th Volksgrenadier Division push forward through the dim winter light, expecting the familiar pattern of impacts ahead and behind. The pattern never comes. The shells detonate in mid-air, 30 to 50 feet above the advancing troops. White flashes bloom in the low clouds. A rain of steel fragments scythes downward in widening cones. Foxholes, ditches, tree trunks, every traditional refuge becomes useless. Veterans who survived years on the Eastern Front try to throw themselves flat. They press into frozen soil, cling to roots, curl behind shattered logs. The fragments still find them. Bodies twist and fall in positions that show no shelter ever existed. Artillery that once punished exposed movement now punishes existence itself. At a nearby American artillery position, Colonel Oscar Alfred Axelson of the 406th Artillery Group stands over his guns. He has already broken his orders. He has already crossed a line that higher command refused to cross. He has ordered his gunners to load shells fitted with the most closely guarded secret in the Allied arsenal: proximity fuses. Inside each metal nose, a miniature radar set waits to sense the world and decide when to kill. The decision is unauthorized. The consequences are immediate. German assault formations that would normally absorb ground bursts and keep moving begin to disintegrate. Men vanish into the snow in clusters. Gaps open in lines that were solid minutes earlier. Officers wave arms, try to push the attack forward. The air bursts answer with more steel. The German advance near Monschau stalls under invisible geometry. The mathematics of death change in real time. Operation Watch on the Rhine has begun with enormous promise for Germany. Around 200,000 German soldiers, 1,000 tanks, and nearly 2,000 artillery pieces move through the fog-shrouded Ardennes. The offensive aims at Antwerp and at the fragile seam between Allied armies. At 0530, German guns open with 1,600 rounds per minute along an 85-mile front. Intelligence failures leave green units and exhausted veterans exposed in what they believe was a quiet sector. Yet on this northern shoulder, Axelson faces a different kind of crisis. Conventional artillery patterns cannot break the German momentum. Every minute of hesitation risks a breakthrough. Axelson chooses disobedience over collapse. His guns now fire shells whose fuses were supposed to be reserved for anti-aircraft defense. The fear in Washington and London has been simple and absolute. If a single intact fuse falls into German hands, their scientists might copy it. The balance of air power and artillery could shift overnight. On this morning, that fear yields to a more immediate one: the fear of losing the line. German units that once trusted their experience now find it useless. The old rules of survival under artillery no longer apply. The sky itself becomes the primary threat. Word of the slaughter near Monschau travels upward through American command channels with unusual speed. Reports describe German attacks stopped cold by air bursts that ignore terrain. Casualty estimates rise beyond expectations for such limited sectors. Within 3 days, the crisis at higher headquarters reaches the top. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, watching the Bulge expand across his maps, recognizes the scale of the danger. On December 19th, he formally requests permission to release proximity fuses for ground use. By December 21st, the restriction ends. The secret leaves the narrow world of anti-aircraft batteries and enters the forests and fields of the Ardennes. Within days, proximity-fused shells move along icy roads and over clogged supply routes toward embattled units. Wooden crates marked with cryptic codes arrive at gun positions where crews stamp their feet against the cold and wait for orders. At Bastogne, the 463rd Parachute Field Artillery Battalion receives its allocation as the German ring tightens. Their 75mm pack howitzers, light enough to support airborne troops, now fire shells that can decide their own burst height. Southwest of the town, the 969th Field Artillery Battalion, an African-American unit under Lieutenant Colonel Hubert D. Barnes, prepares its 155mm howitzers. The larger guns will throw heavier shells, each capable of covering vast areas with fragments when detonated at 50 feet. The 420th Armored Field Artillery Battalion, with M7 Priest self-propelled howitzers, positions along the northwest approaches. Their vehicles sit half buried in snow and mud, engines idling, barrels elevated toward the low winter sky. Forward observers no longer need to walk fire carefully onto targets. Rounds no longer have to strike the ground or rely on fragile timing calculations. The fuses sense their distance to the earth and to massed bodies, then trigger at the most lethal point. Artillery shifts from blunt support to decisive instrument. Around Bastogne, the siege tightens. The 101st Airborne Division holds the crossroads under constant pressure. Between December 19th and 31st, the 463rd Parachute Field Artillery Battalion fires exactly 7,676 rounds. Not all carry proximity fuses, but those that do leave distinctive patterns. German infantry attacks roll forward across snow-covered fields. Dark lines of men advance against pale ground. When the proximity-fused shells burst overhead, the snow erupts in chaotic sprays. Entire platoons vanish in seconds. Survivors stumble backward, leaving trails of dark stains across white drifts. On December 22nd, after General Anthony McAuliffe issues his famous single-word reply, "Nuts," to a German surrender demand, another assault forms. The attackers move in traditional formations, trusting numbers and discipline. The American guns answer with overlapping airbursts. No shell needs to land among them. The sky above them becomes a layered field of steel. There are no safe intervals, no dead ground, no protective folds in the terrain. The 969th Battalion adds its weight. Their 155mm shells burst higher, at around 50 feet, and throw fragments across even wider circles. German prisoners later describe units losing cohesion before reaching American lines. Men scatter under invisible patterns they cannot predict or escape. The forests that once promised concealment now betray them. In the dense woods of the Ardennes, trunks stand close together, branches interlock overhead, and snow clings to every limb. Under conventional artillery, these trees offer cover. Under proximity fuses, they become amplifiers of destruction. A single 155mm shell detonating above the canopy sends metal fragments outward and downward. At the same instant, the blast shatters branches into jagged spears. Wooden splinters, some as long as a human arm, streak through the air at hundreds of feet per second. Foxholes dug under roots fill with debris and fragments from above. Men pressed against thick trunks feel those trunks explode into shards. The forest floor becomes a carpet of broken wood and torn bodies. American gunners quickly understand this effect. They adjust their firing data to burst shells just above the treetops. Reports from forward positions describe clearings where every living thing has vanished within an area the size of a tennis court. German units trained in forest tactics find their skills turned against them. Spreading out to reduce casualties only exposes more men to the wide, lethal radius. Closing ranks for mutual support concentrates them under single bursts. No formation solves the problem. The new fuse does not care about doctrine. And while the forests burn and Bastogne holds, the story of this weapon leads away from the front lines, to laboratories, assembly lines, and people who will never see the Ardennes, but shape its outcome. Behind this battlefield transformation lies a hidden industrial and scientific effort of staggering scale. The proximity fuse is not a simple mechanical timer. It is a compact radar system, no larger than a coffee can, built to survive forces that would crush most machines. Inside each fuse, around 130 electronic components crowd together. 4 or 5 miniature vacuum tubes, depending on the model, sit cushioned against shock. At firing, the shell experiences around 20,000 times the force of gravity. A glass ampule inside shatters, releasing electrolyte that activates a battery. The tiny radar wakes as the shell races through the sky. The transmitter inside operates around 180 to 220 megahertz. It sends out continuous radio waves that bounce off the ground, trees, vehicles, and human bodies below. As the shell descends, the reflected signal grows stronger. When it reaches a predetermined intensity, corresponding to an optimal height, an electronic circuit triggers detonation. All of this happens in fractions of a second, inside a spinning projectile, in temperatures that swing from barrel heat near 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit to sub-zero cold at the top of the trajectory. The development of this device has required a concentration of scientific talent, rivaled only by the atomic bomb project. At Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, disguised as an abandoned used car dealership in Silver Spring, Maryland, Dr. Merle Tuve drives the program forward. At peak, the laboratory employs around 3% of all American physicists. Security matches the importance. Workers cannot discuss their tasks, even with families. Each fuse carries a unique serial number. Components move through guarded assembly lines where every solder joint faces magnified inspection. The key breakthrough comes from miniaturization. Vacuum tubes that once filled radio cabinets shrink to the size of pencil erasers. Dr. James Van Allen designs tubes that can endure the shock of firing and still function reliably. These tiny devices will later form the basis for instruments that reach into space. By December 1944, American factories produce around 40,000 proximity fuses every day. More than 100 companies contribute. RCA, General Electric, Sylvania, Crosley, Emerson Radio, and many others convert peacetime production lines into fuse assembly. The workforce is largely female. Women stand at benches for 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, under bright lights that reveal every flaw. They test resistors, wind coils, solder connections, and pack finished fuses into crates. They know only that their work is vital and secret. In 1942, each fuse costs around $732. By late 1944, mass production and ruthless quality control reduced that figure to about $18. Around 22 million fuses roll off the lines during the war. Around 200,000 of them will be fired during the Battle of the Bulge. On the German side, a different story unfolds. In December 1944, German forces overrun an American ammunition depot and capture around 20,000 proximity fused shells. Technicians examine the strange devices. They find vacuum tubes inside artillery fuses and reject the evidence of their own eyes. To them, such tubes cannot possibly survive firing. They conclude that the visible electronics must be decoys, or that some other principle, perhaps magnetic, controls detonation. The most important captured technology of the campaign slips through their understanding. The irony runs deep. Before the war, German firms like Rheinmetall Borsig and AEG Berlin led early proximity fuse research. By 1940, they have working prototypes using electrostatic principles. Hitler then orders cancellation of all projects requiring more than 6 months to reach production. The German proximity fuse program dies on paper. Later, Hermann Göring will admit under interrogation that German fuses stand only 3 or 4 months from production when the war ends. Their test models show around 95% reliability. Had development continued, such weapons might have appeared by 1941. Instead, in the winter of 1944, German infantry face a technology their own scientists once pioneered and then abandoned. On December 25th, the war in the Ardennes ignores the calendar. German units attempt to use Christmas for resupply and reorganization. Field kitchens steam in the cold air. Trucks line forest tracks. Men gather around vehicles and fuel dumps. American artillery units now armed with proximity fuses see only grid squares and coordinates. The 420th Armored Field Artillery Battalion alone fires more than 1,000 rounds that day, most with proximity fuses. Shells burst above supply points, assembly areas, and road junctions. Snowfall and fog that once grounded aircraft and blinded spotters now hide only the approach of shells. German soldiers who learn to move under cloud cover and at night discover that the sky still kills them. The brief whistle of incoming rounds becomes the only warning before air bursts tear through canvas, wood, and flesh. Elsewhere, elite German formations feel the same transformation. On December 21st, SS Colonel Otto Skorzeny leads specially selected commandos toward Malmedy. These troops have rescued Benito Mussolini, nearly captured Josip Broz Tito, and infiltrated American lines in stolen uniforms. They move with confidence born of training and past success. They meet proximity-fused artillery. Shells burst above them with uncanny regularity. Their American uniforms, meant to deceive, offer no protection. Accounts describe heavy losses and shattered cohesion. The attack fails. Skorzeny's offensive operations effectively end in the Ardennes. Even among these fanatical units, discipline cracks. Some survivors reportedly rush toward American positions in desperate attempts to escape the bombardment. The belief in German superiority dissolves under a storm of steel that seems to ignore courage and skill alike. On the southern flank, General George S. Patton's Third Army drives north toward Bastogne. His artillery commander, Brigadier General Edward Williams, recognizes the unique potential of proximity fuses and reshapes tactics around them. Williams refines the time on target concept. Multiple battalions fire so that their shells arrive simultaneously over the same coordinates. When dozens of proximity fused rounds detonate at once at optimal height, the effect becomes overwhelming. German soldiers give this phenomenon a name. They call it the bell toll of death. Between December 22nd and 29th, Third Army fires around 50,000 proximity fused shells. Patton later writes, "The funny fuse won the Battle of the Bulge for us." His arithmetic is simple: fewer shells, more effect, faster breakthroughs. On Elsenborn Ridge, the 2nd and 99th Infantry Divisions hold critical high ground against the 6th SSSS Panzer Army, including the 1st SS Panzer Division Leibstandarte. Adolf Hitler. From December 17th to 19th, American artillery fires around 160,000 rounds. Around 40,000 of these use proximity fuses. Those 25% of shells account for an estimated 60% of more than 5,000 German casualties in the sector. Repeated attacks up steep, forested slopes meet walls of air burst steel. Entire companies vanish in minutes. Bodies pile so thick that later waves must climb over their own dead. After 3 days, the assaults stop. The elite of the Waffen-SS has been broken not by numbers alone, but by technology that multiplies every gun's power. In the air, the same principle applies. On January 1st, 1945, the Luftwaffe launches Operation Bodenplatte. Around 900 fighters strike Allied airfields in a last attempt to cripple air power. The initial surprise catches many aircraft on the ground. On the return, German pilots fly into belts of proximity-fused anti-aircraft fire. Of 277 German aircraft lost that day, 172 fall to ground-based guns, most using the new fuses. Pilots trained to dodge predicted fire patterns find shells bursting where their evasive maneuvers should have saved them. The Luftwaffe, already weakened, never recovers from these losses. By early January, secrecy around the proximity fuse cannot hold. Too many units have used it. Too many soldiers have seen its effects. On January 6th, the War Department authorizes limited public disclosure. The New York Times reports on a new type of artillery shell that multiplies American firepower. The article avoids technical details, but the existence of a revolutionary fuse becomes public knowledge. German intelligence finally assembles the pieces. A January 10th report from Foreign Armies West states, the Americans possess a radio-controlled artillery fuse that detonates shells at optimal height for anti-personnel effect. This weapon has caused severe casualties among our forces in the Ardennes. No effective countermeasures exist. Post-war German commanders speak with similar clarity. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt states, "The proximity fuse was decisive. Our attacks broke down not because of American courage, though they fought well." General Hasso von Manteuffel, commander of 5th Panzer Army, testifies the American artillery was the terror of our soldiers, especially the new shells that exploded in the air. They caused panic even among veteran troops. The numbers support their words. Around 200,000 proximity-fused shells fired during the Battle of the Bulge. Analysts later estimate that they caused between 15,000 and 20,000 German casualties, perhaps up to 20% of total German losses in the campaign. Studies show that proximity fuses increase lethality by 5 to 10 times over conventional fuses. The lethal fragment area grows by a factor of around 50. In anti-aircraft roles, success against V-1 flying bombs jumps from about 17% to around 79% within weeks of deployment. Behind these statistics lies human cost on both sides. Many German soldiers under those airbursts are teenagers, conscripted in the war's final phase. They die in ways that older generations of soldiers never imagined, under weapons that seem to sense their presence and deny every instinct for survival. In American factories, workers pay their own price. Accidents occur on assembly lines that cannot be discussed. Stress and exhaustion take their toll on men and women who handle delicate components for 12 hours at a stretch. They build devices of unprecedented lethality without knowing exactly what they are creating. The Battle of the Bulge claims around 19,000 American dead and around 75,000 total American casualties. Historians later weigh the role of proximity fuses in shortening the battle and, by extension, the war. General Eisenhower will later judge that German possession of similar fuses might have made the D-Day landings exceedingly difficult, perhaps impossible. The statement underlines the strategic weight of this single technological leap. Beyond the Ardennes, the proximity fuse leaves a legacy that extends far past 1945. The miniaturized vacuum tubes developed for it become stepping stones toward modern electronics. The quality control methods, with every component tested and every joint inspected, set new industrial standards. The coordination of more than 100 companies, each producing specialized parts on strict schedules, pioneers supply chain practices that later defined peacetime industry. Dr. James Van Allen carries his experience with compact, rugged electronics into the space age and helps reveal Earth's radiation belts. The core idea inside the fuse, that a weapon can sense its environment and decide when to act, becomes the foundation for guided missiles and smart munitions. Every modern precision-guided weapon traces its lineage back to those tiny radar sets inside artillery shells over the Ardennes. On January 25, 1945, the Battle of the Bulge officially ends. German forces pull back from their salient. Hitler's last major offensive in the West has cost Germany around 100,000 casualties and achieved no lasting gain. The snow-covered forests and villages of the Ardennes fall silent again, littered with wrecked vehicles, abandoned guns, and unmarked graves. The air that once glittered with steel fragments now hangs heavy with smoke and fog. From Axelson's unauthorized decision on December 16th to the final withdrawal in late January, proximity fuses have moved from guarded secret to battlefield constant. They have turned artillery into a weapon that seems to ignore terrain, weather, and traditional tactics. The German soldiers who face those airbursts experience more than defeat. They stand at the edge of a new era in warfare, where industrial capacity and scientific innovation shape outcomes as decisively as courage and numbers. In the frozen forests of the Ardennes, the age of technological warfare arrives in the form of small metal cylinders screwed into the noses of shells. The mathematics of death change forever. The sky above the battlefield becomes an active participant, not just an empty space through which projectiles travel. The men who die beneath proximity-fused bursts in that winter are casualties of a particular campaign and of a broader transformation. Their fate marks the moment when weapons begin to sense, calculate, and decide, and when the path toward modern smart warfare becomes impossible to ignore.